Thank you so much, Jessica Lee, for your time today. I am so excited to speak about your achievements on Severance this season in particular. I want to start at the beginning, though, and ask about your introduction to filmmaking because I hear you quite literally grew up around movies and television.
Television, not so much, but the films, yes. I grew up in video stores, which is kind of funny and I don't know. I guess it's very cute now. My whole childhood was running around video stores and running behind my father, who owned several of them and also had like a video distribution company, but he was focused on smaller local style video stores, so when you go to like that grocery store that would also like have a couple movies that you can rent in the corner,
Mhm.
like those kinds of things. So yeah, I grew up with knowing that smell of popcorn and just like wanting to be the one making the popcorn in the video store and was so happy when like the people would let me do it. So yeah, that really was my childhood.
Do you remember having any favorite shows or movies you're saying in particular that growing up inspired you?
I think it took a minute before I really understood, I understood like what filmmaking was. Like most kids and teenagers, you watch movies for entertainment, right? And I was not watching anything like really particular or specific that I feel like marked me as a filmmaker until I saw City of God, which actually kind of made me realize what a director was doing. I feel like there's this
Mhm.
people who want to become directors when they like find a movie that's different or has like a really strong directing approach that comes out of like what we're watching as entertainment. You realize, oh, okay, there's like someone making conscious choices here. And for me, that was the movie that I kind of clicked.
That's an incredible movie in style and function. I love that. I just recently watched that again, actually. Um, as a kid or growing up, were you aware that there were a few female filmmakers? And then maybe today realizing, as you get into awards and the industry itself, even fewer female cinematographers or ones that are just recognized in general.
Initially, no, I don't think I wasn't focusing or even thinking about those kinds of things. I was very much brought up in a way, like I remember my father told me one day, like, I don't want you to ever need a man to do anything, which, has its like negative sides as well. But, I was taught to kind of like, okay, know how to like change tires or know, do things for myself and be really, really independent. And I never kind of thought about it until I went to film school and then it became more, then it was obvious. And then working in the film industry, there was when I started working professionally on features, I definitely felt a little bit of resistance from crew, in terms of like, oh, I was like, what's going on here? Like, why are they not just doing what I'm asking them to do? And sometimes I would be put in situations where I would ask for something and they would do something else. And I didn't know if that was like because I was a woman or because I was really young. Because I feel like I kind of had to deal with both of those together, the kind of like ageism thing as well. And when I started as a DP, it was not common for cinematographers to be my age. Now we're in like a completely different era where age is really not as much of a thing. It's actually kind of like reversed in a weird way. But yeah, that was strange. And that made me kind of be a little bit upset about it. But at the same time, I just kind of moved through it. And when I'd get to the end of a project, I feel like there was a special bond between me and the crew where then there was like the respect there. I kind of had to earn it at the beginning. Um, but now where I see it the most and where I feel like I want to try and operate in the future, I don't know, I haven't like made it there yet. It's going to take time, is more on bigger scale projects. Making sure that, like if I feel like I'm gravitating towards that slowly, and having worked on Severance and Escape with Ben, I feel like I was being shown a little bit, okay, this is like how it is to work on that bigger financial scale. And I thrive in that. So I feel like I could keep going in that direction, but that's really where I feel like there's not enough women. Like not enough women have been given opportunities to do
Mhm.
these larger scale projects. It's coming slowly, but we like it's still something that needs to be pushed through.
Totally, I agree. Are there any barriers that you think you've helped reshape or ones that you want to target going forward?
I think will help reshape. I don't know, it's hard to know that what I've done specifically. I think, people are inspired by certain things, and I do hear from time to time that like it's that certain women and younger women have been inspired by my work, and I'm like that's so moving, and it just makes me want to do it more. I've definitely been confronted by intense personalities on set that have like not wanted me to have a voice and not wanted me to shine. So like you push through that, and when people see that, that's great. Um, in terms of things that I want to target, this isn't something that I felt like I could do as much as a cinematographer, but now going into directing, I think I want to try and focus on this. It's telling stories that I feel like only I can tell or that women should be telling. So like when I'm looking for stuff now, it's like, do I feel like I am like the person that should be telling this specific story? And if there's not that kind of connection, if I feel like someone else can, because you read scripts sometimes, and even as a DP, I would read a script and I was like, oh my God, that like woman or guy would be amazing for that project. And I would like suggest it and it kind of like take myself out of the running, like if I didn't feel like I was the right match.
That's great. Getting into Severance, you're hinting at it, and I really can't wait to talk about it. How did you help craft its distinctive style? Because your role in the show has also transformed from season one to season two. You have been a producer this entire season. As a director of photography, you've worked on 15 out of the 19 episodes, so you've obviously had a hand in all of that. And then eventually we'll get to your directorial debut in episode seven, which is a highlight of this season. But you've, or I'm curious, I want to hear about your hand in crafting the show and how you see yourself in its style.
I mean, it was a whole adventure, and it was like piece by piece. But originally, and I've said this many times, that I didn't want to do season one of Severance because as a cinematographer, I wasn't interested in the office aesthetic. I guess it's because I was just at that moment not thinking about innovation or thinking about something that would be different or its own thing. I was just trying to imprint it on something that had already been done. And for me, there was no desire to do what had been done in like other kind of office things. And you read the script and you don't necessarily know like where this thing can go, but I saw it as in a limiting kind of way for a cinematographer. And then I found this specific book called Office by Lars Thunbjork, and that really opened up my mind in terms of like what it could be. And I went on my own kind of like visual reference research to see like where this can go and what it can be. And Ben, I think, had his own ideas as well. But then like that all kind of came together with the production designer. And then I found that location, the Bell Labs location, because I wasn't happy with what was coming out from the scouts of the location managing. It's not their fault. Like
Mhm.
it's a really hard location to find, but I feel like as a DP, the locations are this they're kind of the core of what you can do and like what you're able to how you're able to work. So I always work really closely with production designers in finding these things. And I ended up finding that place, which was really important, in creating the aesthetic of the show. And I feel like once we had that, it gave us so much structure to move forward. And then you paired that with the references that we had. It all kind of like came together slowly, and we did a lot of testing, and yeah, found it over like the first, I'd say the first couple episodes of shooting is more where we like really defined the look. And the sets were also like so intense and beautiful and striking that you naturally could like how would I even explain this? Just the shape of like MDR and how those desks are, it like drives the frame. So it all made itself in a weird way. And then season two was just about making it bigger, and expanding the world. And like, what is that on the outside? Where does that go? So there was a lot of expansion and reinnovation, which was fine. But in season two, we weren't questioning the look anymore. I think it was more like helping other directors and cinematographers now entering this space and making sure that everything was aligned. But the language was really defined on season one.
You never feel constricted by the frame, and there are a lot of interior spaces. And so I congratulate you on that. And in season two, we are exploring a lot more the individual of Lumen than in season one, which I think is totally your vision because throughout the season, there's this huge transformative arc that I think really relies on the camera, how you shoot, the lighting, and the space. And I want to talk about a few episodes and hear your input. In episode one, Hello, Miss Cobell, we have that opening sequence of Mark running through the halls, that oneer. It's fantastic. And we also have this strange claymation video of the Macrodata uprising, and then all the way in episode 10, you have this innie outie Mark conversation happening. Interior, it's warmer, and exteriorly, you have that really blue moon shining. I like that. The marching band sequence, how you manipulate light in those hallways, and I think that allows you to play with that stark lighting that maybe you didn't want to work with in the show initially. So how was this a part of your vision of creating this arc through the lens and not just on paper or through character?
I don't think there's like any major conscious thing here in terms of me and like what I'm doing in an arc or overall on the show. I think we just kind of like defined an aesthetic, and it was strong, and it kind of like became its own thing. But it was in every scene, looking at every scene and seeing, okay, well, what's the most interesting visual way that this scene can come out? And I'm always looking for ways to kind of implement lighting changes just because the office thing was so restricting. And if I go back to season one, I had to like fight for that little practical light on their desk. And it's nothing against Jeremy, but is it he wanted like a super slick minimal design, but I'm like, but I need that light. Like, and there was no scene in the season, or like in what was written at that point, where it said, okay, they turn on the light or they turn off the lights. Like those weren't part of the writing. And because I was so desperate to make lighting changes, I asked for them to like build a light well in Cobell's office. And I was like, okay, well, let's keep this little light here. And the day we were doing the test, I remember there was like no little light. And I'm like, where's the desk lamp? So it ended up being like this piece that we use, and that gave such mood to so many scenes in season one and two now, like in the finale. Um, like as a DP, you kind of like try and find those moments where you can like create different environments and different things, and even like turning off the lights in MDR, or like the energy saving lights when they're walking, like every time. And Ben and I were both looking for that. Like we were just trying to find places where we could make it feel different. Ben is also very much like, okay, like how can we shoot this differently? We've shot NDR in those hallways so much. Like the hallways are probably like the hardest to make look different. It's really limiting. And just if I could go back to when I didn't want to do the show, like I understand why, like who wants to shoot in a white hall? First of all, where do you even put the camera when there's like two people talking to each other? There's so many moments where, you want more depth and it's really hard and you don't have time to pull the wall. And sometimes we do pull walls to be able to get specific angles, but you can't just improvise that stuff. So yeah, I think we were trying to find also in the writing where were the moments that things, could become visually more fun. And the MDE in season one is what kind of like fueled the lighting for a lot of these like other sequences in season two. And also we had that scene with Grainer where there was the red lighting and all of those moments we knew that we liked in season one. And they're like, okay, well, let's make it bigger, more expansive in season two. Personally, my favorite lighting effects that we did. And that, I have to like thank the dimmer board op, David Castelletta, who just is the one who had to program all this stuff. And he actually like himself was part of the creating of that. Like he would propose things. We Ben would give us the music for things, and then we would talk about like what's the vibe, what's the idea here. And him and the gaffer would like run off and like start programming things. And I'd look at where, you know, we'd work, we would build up to it. It's a lot of like building up to stuff. But like it's hours and hours of work and weeks of testing to get these things right. Like you can't just, it's not a pre-light, it's a whole thing. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, but the video of the claymation, the animation video, I did not do like they did their own thing. So it was like a separate studio doing that. And they're amazing. Like they actually, Ben still has the little figurines.
That's so funny. So let's talk about episode 7, Chikhai Bardo. I would say it's my favorite of the season, which you shot and produced, and this is your directorial debut, which is fantastic. Congratulations, because I, like many of the fans, are were was astounded by this when it aired. How did you, one, do all of these things together, and how did you bridge the gap from cinematography to directing? Was this a part of your plan overall in your career?
No. None of this was planned. But I do want to speak to the producer thing because you know, I didn't really want to come back for season two. Because what I love is world building, creating new language. I get very, very excited about that. And I didn't know, you know, what season two was going to be. So I was like, well, do I think I want to go and do something else? And when it came around, I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to come back, I also want to be a producer because I know I was one of the few people who came back from season one. And I was like, well, I want to make sure that I knew that like questions were going to be people were going to ask me questions about how it was done and how it was made, and I was going to have to take on a role that was bigger than just cinematography. So to me, it was really important to be recognized for that. And then also they offered the directing, which was never part of my plan. I was very afraid of it and wasn't considering it as an option in my career. I did go to film school thinking that I wanted to be a director, and then when I discovered cinematography, you know, there was an ease in there and something natural for me that I kind of like moved through, and people wanted me to shoot their projects, so I kind of like went with it, and I felt safe in that. Directing felt scarier, and I like really, really soon iced it out and was like, well, no, that's not what I want to do. I'm not interested in that. I realized that I wasn't ready to direct back then, or wasn't, you know, it wasn't the time for me, that I had to actually learn through crafting as a cinematographer. Um, and the things that I've learned as a DP, I think are going to inform the type of directing that I'm going to be moving into. And I'm like really grateful for that. But it wasn't part of the plan, and I just kind of like dealt with it as it happened because every time I thought I had some kind of control over it or knew what it was, it would become something else, you know? And then you realize that you're there to serve a whole show. You're not just like episode 7 was there to give weight to the show and to like give meaning on another level to episode 10, and give weight to these relationships basically. And I sometimes had to kind of put my own um, personal desires is not the word, but like as a director, you know, you want to do something that's great on its own, you know, in television, but then you have to remember that, okay, no, actually, like what I want to do here would work for this episode is not necessarily what works for the whole show. So that was always at the back of my mind. Yeah, and had to like move through that.
Well, you introduced, which we had never seen before, these flashback memories of both Gemma and Mark, and it has this really warm atmosphere. It reminded me of old classic French cinema, like Jacques Demy or Truffaut or Varda. So, can you talk about the importance of this juxtaposition, or what influenced you to bring this to the show?
I wonder if it's the Jacques Brel song that kind of like pushes you to I mean, those are movies that for me when I was in school, I really like loved and appreciated. I don't think there was any like real direct reference to it, but I think there's like a certain lightness to some of that kind of filmmaking sometimes that and humanity and like these characters and like life that the characters that they have in their movies that you can kind of see in Gemma and Mark in that time in their life because they're in such an alive moment of their life, you know, whether that's good or bad. Um, but I don't think there was a conscious connection.
Okay. I mean, it's beautifully done. I applaud you on that. One final question to wrap up. What would you tell your innie, or what do you think your innie would think of your career successes so far?
I feel like my innie is the director in a way. Like that is that part of me that I didn't really let out. I have this like weird, I mean, everyone has their kind of interpretation of the psyche of the innie versus the outie and like who it is for you. And the beautiful thing about innies is they're kind of like reborn and they're reborn without all of the pressure of everything around them, except in Lumen, they're kind of tortured. So, you know, it's like it's a little messed up. But for me, I think that yeah, I've always kind of wanted to be a director inside and being in Severance, it's like almost like this any form of me that's like, oh, I'm super protected, you know, in these halls and in like in on these stages, you're in this weird bubble. Especially just working in Severance, that's what on Severance, that's what it feels like. So I think my Amy is really happy right now.
That's great. I mean, there's a lot of pride and courage and honesty with that and going back and forth. And you talk about ego death in episode 7. So there's a lot there of, this internal mental struggle that I really love and I think you really brought to the show. So thank you again so much for chatting today and good luck with this season and your future. I had a great time chatting with you.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Of course.